we speak on election matters. And we have joining us on the program, Samson Itodo of Yaga Africa. This has been one long journey, Mr. Itodo. You released a statement where you tried to, I could understand your, well, I call it dilemma. You were trying to just figure out what exactly is playing out here, really. And we know that the House committee and the Senate committee are meant to meet today behind what I'll describe as closed doors, right, to harmonize this. What is your least expectation from that harmonization process? Let's start from there, then we can maybe walk back to other issues.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning. My least expectation is that the Harmonization Committee will adopt the Senate position on electronic transmission of results, especially how they voted on Clause 60 sub 3. And why is that my least expectation? It's my least expectation because it's a bit confusing what we are being told as a people. On one hand, NCC and INEC told the Nigerian people in 2022, prior to the 2023 elections, that 93% of polling units in Nigeria have network coverage. 3 years down the line, or 4 years down the line, it appears these same institutions have now come back to say we don't have sufficient coverage. And if you follow the statement by the Senate leader, and part of what senators are saying, that the data before them contradicts what these institutions have said. So the bigger question is, what's the actual source of the data and the information? So when you talk about my least expectation, I think that they will differ, to the Senate's position. That's my least expectation. My highest expectation is that the conference committee will be guided by public interest and will listen to Nigerians. I really want to give them the benefit of doubt that they will hearken and heed to Nigerians' call, because I don't see why politicians are worried and are scared of electronic transmission of results, if and only if they do not have, any untoward reason behind their pushback. Again, like you referenced, this is not the first step. This thing we're talking about is not new. We have done these things successively. So why is it a contention now? It means something is actually amiss. There's nothing new about what we're saying. This thing happened in 2023. And so the only difference now is we are complying or adhering to what the court said in 2023, that it's not sufficient to introduce this in your guidelines, and that's INEC guidelines. Put it in the law. That's what Nigerians are saying. So I don't understand what is this whole hoopla about this particular issue, except if there's something that our political elite are not telling us.
Mr. Itodo, we had a fair time, looking at the gray areas and the implications for the Senate's position as it differs with that of the House. And one thing that has come through is INEC has, gone ahead to release an election timetable. But let's assume that, following the conferencing of the two chambers, that committee and the harmonization process is done, and we have a document different from what is obtainable in the Electoral Act Amendment 2022, what implications would it have on the electoral process for 2027? I imagine there are a gamut of implications that will come through. What should we be looking at and what should we be preparing for?
Well, thanks, Bukola. In the article I published yesterday, it was very clear. We are heading for a constitutional crisis relating to dates of elections. And here is it. First, let me express my deep concern that, we have boxed, and I wouldn't say we, I think the political elites have boxed us as a country into a very tight corner. This is why we have kept on insisting that conclude electoral amendments before, we get close to the elections. Now we are close to the elections. There's a lot of confusion in the system. On one part, INEC has complied with Section 28 of the 2022 Electoral Act that it should issue notice of elections or publish election timetable 360 days before the date of the next election. It has complied with the law. There's a law in force. But the time it published the timetable, the National Assembly is yet to conclude on its amendment. Now, the issue relating to sort of religious observances has now come to the table. And now we are now considering moving the dates of elections. So let's look at where we stand. The Constitution is clear that you cannot conduct elections not earlier than 150 days, that's 5 months to the end of the incumbent, as well as 30, not later than 30 days to the end of the tenure of the incumbent. That leaves us with 5 months. The reason why we have elections in February, it's because it gives a time for INEC to conduct reruns, to conduct runoff elections. Now, we are told that the date, 20th of February, falls within a fasting period. That's 20th of February, 2027. Okay, where we are today is if you take into consideration the fasting periods, because Christians also fast. And by the way, in 2023, elections held February 2025. By February 22nd, 2023 was Ash Wednesday. So elections held during the Lenten season in 2023. Now in 2027, we're being told that, yes, we cannot have, or we should consider not having elections during the fasting period. When you look at it, the earliest elections can hold, if you look at earlier than 150 days, will be 29th of January, 2027. And if the Ramadan starts either on the 7th and the 8th, it leaves us with only 10 days. It's impossible to conduct general elections within 10 days. So I really wish both INEC and the National Assembly well. Let's see what comes out of tomorrow's extraordinary session. But whatever the case, Bukola, the timetable issued by INEC is going to be revised based on the resolutions that will come out from the National Assembly. In fact, you recall that the Senate already altered timelines in their own provisions, but the House didn't. So if they go ahead and adopt the position, then the timetable that INEC issued would have to be revised. And quite frankly, barring any miraculous changes, the dates for the 2027 elections will be changed. That's our prediction, and anyone, even a blind man, can actually see that that is probably going to happen in the next few days.
There you go. I know that INEC also sort of try to give some clarification as to what the law says, and which is why they chose that date, not to offend anybody on the religious angle. But I know we had the chairman of the House Committee on INEC yesterday on our sister show, Sunday Politics, where he said, well, the law is a continuum, so they may start almost like a football match. You can start the match with Electoral Act 2022, then midway, maybe halftime, you switch to another rule, Electoral Act 2026. But he was sweet the way he was saying it, but when you look at the operationalization of things, obviously this is going to cause major confusion if we're going to do it that way. But just as a sideline, or on the sideline rather, is there anything like manual transmission when it comes to IRev?
Interesting question. I listened to the commentary this morning. When you say manual transmission, what is manual is not electronic. And so when we say manual transmission, it simply means the physical transfer of results from one level to the other. In that case, you are not introducing technology that makes it automated.
Mr. Itodo,
That's
pardon
what
me.
we mean when you say Yes.
Pardon me, because I need to really understand this, and I'm asking you like a 5-year-old, right? What we have already is manual process for collating results, right? That is what is
exactly
in the law. That's what's in practice. That section 65 or 3 deals with what happens with the election when you want to upload to IRev. Am I correct?
Absolutely. It has to do with transmitting the results, from the polling unit to IRev or a central server.
Exactly.
And the purpose for doing that is to aid the manual collation process so that you can verify between what was electronically transmitted with the physical copies of the result sheets.
Okay.
And collation cannot be complete if you don't compare this result, because both of them must be consistent. And when there is a discrepancy, you clearly know that results might have been altered, or it could have been a function of error or computational inaccuracy on the part of those who are managing the collation process.
So just quickly before I yield, isn't IRev just a result viewing portal? Is it for collation as well?
The IRev as at today is not a results collation system. INEC have insisted that it's a result viewing portal. However, in INEC's guidelines, the results, though for viewing purposes, have to be used to compare the physical copies of the result. So the missing link, and I think what Nigerians also need to know, is that we need to expand the discussion to electronic collation. There's a difference between transmission and collation. Transmission simply means moving the results from one point to another. Collation is tallying and putting those results together. And I think what Nigerians are saying is we want electronic transmission, we also want electronic collation of results. Unfortunately, the electronic collation bit of this entire value chain is missing. We want to transmit electronically and then collate manually. That's the current system, that is in place. And it's actually going to be a missed opportunity. If we don't have electronic transmission and we don't have electronic collation, there is a missing link somewhere. And this is why, it is important for the National Assembly, to listen to what Nigerians are saying. And if they are elected to represent the interest of Nigerians, I see no reason why the position of the House of Reps on this particular clause should not be adopted.
All right, in closing, Mr. Itodo, I just want to read a provision for your interpretation. Section 64, subsection 6D, where during collation of results, there is a dispute regarding a collated result or the result of an election from any polling unit, the collation officer or returning officer shall use the following to determine the correctness of the disputed result. There are others, but I'm interested in D for the purpose of what I'm asking. The votes and results of the election recorded and transmitted directly from each polling unit where the election is disputed as prescribed under section 64 of this act. Isn't that what you were talking about?
Not exactly, what we're talking about. Aside the result, but also the accredited voters transmitted directly. But you know how the court interpreted, that transmitted directly from the polling unit in the last round or the last cycle of elections. What we are saying, and the way the current bill has been drafted, is that at the end of voting at the polling units, once the results have been recorded on the form EC8A, the presiding officer should transmit the result electronically, take an image of the result sheet, or the BVAS can be updated with a software that enables the presiding officers to log in or impute the results as well as the accredited data to the IRev. And then when it gets to collation, and I think Nigerians need to pay attention to collation. It's not just, the polling units, because a lot of manipulations happen at the collation level. So that before a collation officer collates results, he or she needs to check what was transmitted from the polling unit on the IRev and the physical copy of the results. Because if there is a difference, it then means that between the polling unit and the collation, the results have changed. And this is why you need the electronic transmitted results to verify. And collation should not happen without that comparison between results transmitted in real time from the polling units to the IRev, because it will undermine the transparency and the credibility of the process. This whole debate is about transparency, and it's just unfortunate that we are just 1 year, less than 1 year to the elections, and we're still debating this issue. And if we're not careful, this is going to hurt the legitimacy, of the next election. And I just want to say that I'm very concerned that when we start tweaking our electoral rules on the basis of religious consideration, keeping in mind that we're a secular state, I think that we shouldn't set certain precedents that will not bode well for our democratic process.
Well said, Mr. Itodo. We have to thank you for your time on the program. We must also say there are other legs that our elections stand on, and this must be holistic as much as possible. Mr. Samson Itodo of Yearnings Africa, I see that your battle is not over, so wish you the very best.
It's our battle, our collective battle.
Absolutely. We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we turn our attention to Ogun State. Last week we had one of the residents in the state who had been chronicling issues around bad roads in the state. And today we have a right of reply from the state government to speak to these issues and more. Stay with us, we'll be right back.